Hey, Diana, did you know that you could use the best EOS tools for free?
Mark, that's the dumbest thing you've ever said.
Ladies and gentlemen, jurists and just curious, welcome to the Successful Barrister podcast. Here you'll learn about marketing, management, and life skills for lawyers that probably won't get you disbarred. Hosted by Marc Whitehead, a seasoned lawyer who remembers when fax machines were cutting edge, and Diana Berry, attorney, COO, and the brains behind the scenes. Together, they are the legal world's most dynamic duo since statutes met regulations. So if you're looking to build a practice, not a prison, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Successful Barrister, where legal legends are made.
And welcome to the Successful Barrister podcast, the podcast for lawyers about marketing, management, and life skills that probably won't get you disbarred. I am your host, Marc Whitehead, alongside my fabulous, brilliant host, Diana Berry, my COO, my right hand. Hey, Diana, what's up?
Not much. I'm excited, Mark. I have a short week this week.
You've got a short week this week. I had a short week last week. I was in Vegas for a couple of days.
Mrs. Whitehead did very well.
Mrs. Whitehead broke Vegas. She broke the bank. I've never seen anybody get on a heater like she did. In a matter of an hour, she took down the Bellagio.
That's awesome. Well, and not only that, then you had to catch a plane, as I understand the story.
The only thing that got her away from the table and losing it all back to the casino was that we had a flight out.
Well, best way to go.
Then the funny story is we went to go cash in all of these thousands of dollars worth of chips that she had won, and they had to call security to verify that she had actually won all that money.
And that she wasn't like a counter or something?
Yeah, they were like, it's just to protect, there's so many thieves right here. And so they got the pit boss on the line like, yeah, that's really her. She really took us for all that money. And so, yes, we just scooted on that plane just barely. But you know what? If we had missed it, it's okay because she had the cash to buy us.
to buy you another ticket.
Buy us another ticket. But.
Well, awesome. Well, I'm glad you had a good one. What are we talking about today?
So we're going to talk about the Entrepreneurial Operating System based off of Gino Wickman's book, Traction. And I know we have talked about this in multiple episodes, and before people start rolling their eyes, like, not again. What we're going to talk about today are the free tools that are available through EOS and how we think that you could get those and implement them yourselves for free.
Yes. So we've talked about Traction early on, episode 2, and then our own personal journey at the firm, your reflections in episode 44, I believe. But now we're going to kind of get into the nuts and bolts of some certain tools that have really worked in our firm and ways that we think you can implement them without actually, if you're not maybe ready to implement EOS or maybe don't have the cash for it, don't have the integrator, whatever the case may be, ways you can implement some of the EOS tools. Right.
So, to do EOS the way that, of course, EOS would sell it to you is you would hire one of their implementors, and that can cost you anywhere from $4,000 to $6,000 a quarter, or more. That's a lot of cash, but there's a lot of really cool tools within EOS that you can implement on your own. Maybe you want to invest the $15 to buy the book Traction, but then you go to the EOS website and they have free downloadable forms which you can use in conjunction with the book. And you can do the stay-at-home version.
Of EOS. And so I guess to recap some of the things we do, I think you and I both, I don't know if we would actually this is the first time we would agree. We do think that implementing EOS with an implementer is actually probably the best way to go. If you can afford it and if you can do it, that is the way to go. But today we're going to talk about things that we think you can do if that's just not for you right now. Right.
I understand. And I understand not everybody's in the has the budget to spend $6,000 a quarter on this. So, anyway, so take us through how are we going to cover this today? I'm kind of curious.
Well, so I did this fabulous outline. Then, of course, just the way things work around here.
I blew it up.
You blew it up 2 minutes before we hit record, and that's okay. So you're going to talk about your two favorite tools, and I'm going to talk about my two favorite tools. We'll go back and forth, and you can start, sir, because you are
Gotcha.
obviously.
Oh, so I get to start.
Yeah, but probably after we come back from break. So, and then we should probably mention EOSworldwide.com is where you can go and just kind of look at some of these. They have a lot of great free resources, blogs, but also just downloadable templates.
Yeah, so most of their tools, that's kind of the cool thing about EOS, and this is a model that we try to follow, is pretty much everything that they have to offer, they have a free version of. And the whole ideal is to get you hooked. It's kind of like a drug dealer. You know, they give you free samples to get you hooked, and then you come back to buy the more expensive stuff. But these free samples actually are pretty much in line with what the paid versions are. It just doesn't have the extra assistance. So I know a lot of people who implement EOS on their own, who do not have a paid implementer, and do it with the free version, and especially smaller firms that are just starting out who may have a extremely small leadership team. One of my coaching clients does EOS, and he just does it with, I think his paralegal and his office manager, and maybe one other key assistant, and they do the free version, and they do quite well with it. So, but anyway, so we want... And just full disclosure, we get nothing out of this.
Oh, this is very true.
We are not paid. I get paid by Atticus, and I know I pimp Atticus a lot.
Yeah.
We don't get paid by EOS. We're strictly a client of EOS.
And I think, though, that it made such a difference at our firm. It really was, I think, one of the key things that started our flywheel, or that got our flywheel going, that I think that people should at least consider some of these tools that helped us.
Right. And I think the key thing in, I've probably said this in dozens of podcasts, but the whole point of EOS, the benefit of EOS, is that you get, as the book says, traction. And traction comes from being able to take great ideas that you come up with as the visionary and being able to get those implemented throughout all levels of your firm. You know, frequently we come back from conferences with great ideas, but then how do we get that implemented throughout the full length and breadth of the firm? And that's the hard part. And I think that is the main thing that EOS does for you. It gives you traction throughout the full length and breadth of your law firm.
No, absolutely. So, unsurprisingly, we completely disagreed on what our favorite tools were. So,
some of mine she doesn't even like, but that's okay.
I abhor.
She abhors. But that makes for good podcasting when we disagree. So we're going to disagree on some of this stuff.
I guess we'll be back.
This podcast is sponsored by Marc Whitehead and Associates, a national disability benefits law firm. Marc Whitehead runs a firm of over 60 dedicated people whose mission is to make a difference in the lives of our injured and disabled clients. Marc represents disabled claimants in Social Security disability, private disability insurance, and veterans disability claims in all 50 states. Marc Whitehead is double board certified in both Social Security disability law and personal injury trial law. Marc has litigated disability cases in over 40 states and counting, and can help your clients too. Stop throwing your phone calls away. Call Marc Whitehead at 701-VIP-LEAD. That's 701-VIP-LEAD. Or visit our website at disabilitydenials.com. Referral fees are paid in all jurisdictions where it is permitted. Refer us your disability cases today and know that your clients will be in good hands.
And we're back. All right, Diana, where are we at here? How are we gonna skin this cat?
Well, you get to go first, sir.
Okay.
So what was your favorite tool? What is your all-time favorite EOS tool?
So the Vision Traction Organizer,
AKA
the VTO, the Vision Traction Organizer, the VTO, is exactly that. It is basically the summary. It is the culmination of your ideas. Basically, it's your business plan. And it's a simple 2-page document. And there is a process to go through to develop this 2-page document. But you start with the vision, and with that comes, you start with your core values. What are your core values? Ours, we parsed this out for a long time. We came up with integrity, compassion, commitment, excellence, teamwork, and wellness. And we came up with definitions for each of those. And that's where we started. These are our core values. The next thing you do is, what is your core focus? And they divide that up into two areas, purpose and niche. Our purpose, as we came up with at Marc, Whitehead and Associates, was to make a difference in the lives of injured and disabled people. A very short, very succinct statement, but it's what our purpose is. What is our niche? Experience comprehensive disability advocacy. In other words, what do we do? We fought over this one, and I don't think we got this one right, but whatever, close enough. We focus on disability law. We know what we do. And so you start with those concepts. What's our core values? What's our core focus? What gets us up out of bed in the morning? And then you go on and you develop what are your 5-year targets. And I think they use the word target very specifically because 5 years is sort of a long time to have a goal, because goals move. As I said, the goalpost moves from probably every 3 months. So they don't call them 5-year goals, they call them 5-year targets. So what are your targets for the next 5 years? What are your growth goals? What are your operational goals? What are your marketing goals? What are your, goals regarding community relations? There's could be a whole myriad of topics, but there's an exercise that you go through to figure out what your 5-year targets are. Then there's a section where you go through what's your marketing strategy, because without clients, it doesn't matter. None of the rest of it matters if you don't have clients. So you got to figure out your marketing strategy. Then you move on to what they call the 3-year picture. So what does the picture look like in 3 years? So in other words, we're reverse engineering through this VTO, through this process. And you go through and what is your 3-year picture? I like how they go from target to picture. And then, of course, then we go to what is your 1-year plan? So over the next 12 months, what is the plan? What are you going to do? And this is where traction comes in, because traction gives, all right, so how are you going to develop the plans? How are you going to meet the milestones, the goals for, to accomplish in 1 year where you want to be? And that's what they call rocks, which is your quarterly rocks. You could call them your quarterly goals, whatever. Your 90-day plan is what we call it an Atticus. It's all the same thing. Everybody's got to have a name for something, because everybody's got to write a book.
And write TM after.
Everybody's got to write TM after whatever it is.
I think actually VTO is TM'd, by the way.
A VTO is definitely TM'd. As Atticus would say, we TM the shit out of it. But so you develop your quarterly rocks, and then you have an issues list. And I like this part because this is kind of one of those things that always bothered me. Was there are things that just don't fit into my 5-year, 3-year, 1-year plan, my 90-day goals. They're just spinning wheels out there.
Tolerances.
They're tolerances. They're just things that are going on, and I don't know where to put them. And so they have a thing called an issues list. It's just a set of issues that are out there, and it's just things you need to be aware of. And we get to the level 10, we'll talk about how we deal with issues. The long and short is the VTO, the Vision Traction Organizer, is just a simple 2-page worksheet where you basically are coming up with your business plan over the next 5 years. And in my opinion, the biggest waste of time are people who come up with these 20 or 30-page business plans that once they're done, they get locked away. Nobody ever looks at them. Nobody ever dusts them off to see if you actually did anything with them. They just kind of sit there. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of a waste. And one of the reasons they sit there is because they're just these long, tomes of war and peace that nobody wants to look at.
Tomes, yeah.
Tomes. Did I say tombs? I said I meant tomes.
Sometimes they're both.
Sometimes. So it's a quick, down and dirty plan for the next 5 years. And it's something that's easily shareable and easily explainable to your whole team. And that's what we did.
Yes. And Marc Whitehead isms, it's a true 1-pager. So Marc is always about go make it a 1-pager. Doesn't matter if I'm creating executive plan or if we're working on a quarterly goals, make it a 1-pager. So that's why I think you love it. Why I abhor this tool is because it is mine to update and create every quarter, and I never quite get it right. So it sounds so simplistic in the way that you described it, but don't underestimate, I think, listeners, how important it is to get it just right. I think our implementer works very hard with me. I send it to her every quarter and I'm like, hey, is this right? She goes, yes, but, and she always has something to tweak. So one of the things, though, that I think that was a good takeaway for us is even if you already have these things as you did before we started EOS, it would probably be a good idea if you have a new leadership team or even just a leadership team to go ahead and revisit them. We probably spent 2 or 3 of our first EOS days, or that first 3, that was probably what we did, is rehashing all of this.
Right. I mean, we spent a long time working through this.
Experience disability advocacy.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
Somehow that took us hours to come up with that.
Yes.
And we still are not happy with it. So let me push back on some of what you said there.
That's
So first of all plans should metaphorically be written in pencil, okay? All plans should be changeable, should be adjustable, should be, flexible, because nobody knows what the future will bring. You make your best guess. Obviously the best firms do, make a lot of effort in trying to predict what is going to happen in the future, but you always have to be flexible. So it should always be written in pencil. Just like your budget should always be written in pencil, because there are times when you need to make adjustments, and you need to make adjustments on the fly. So it is a living, breathing document. Here's where I'm pushing back on you. It will never be perfect.
No, that's right.
And if you're going to take a perfectionist attitude towards this document, you are going to be massively frustrated, because it will never be perfect, because it will never be finished.
Well, now we understand why I'm frustrated.
Yes, this is your high C in you is coming out, and this is what bothers you, is because you want perfection in a document that literally can never be perfect. By definition, it can never be perfect.
Yes, it can never be perfect, but it also evolves. And so who's responsible for keeping it up? Me. But also there's the measurables. So the things that we talked about with the 5-year target, then, that's another EOS word, or the measurables, and how many for our firm, how many attorney referrals or client referrals, how many of new offices will we have? Those are all the measurables that you're carrying over from your 5-year target to your 3-year target to your 1 year to your rocks. And so, one of the things that our implementer, Christine Spray, still works with us on is when we go through our VTOs, as we do at every quarterly meeting. So that's yet one more thing that I think you should definitely do at your quarterly meetings is look at the VTO, even if you're not implementing EOS.
Right.
And she says, okay, guys, remember your core values. This is who we are. So she breaks it down, and then our core focus is what we do. The 5-year target, the 3-year target, that's how we're going to get there. And I think it helps us remember this is who, what, how. All the different things, because I think everything on there is TM'd. So you get stuck in, okay, this is my niche. Wait, what is a niche? It doesn't matter. That's how we're going to do what we say we're going to do.
So one of the things that makes this a useful tool is that this is the first thing we pull out every quarter, and we review it and we look at it. So again, and it's not that hard to do because it's only 2 pages, front and back.
Yeah.
As opposed to the 20 or 30 or 40 page business plan, which nobody ever looks at. And we have one of those. And we still use it to an extent, but again, we don't look at it as much as we just look at the VTO. Now, again, this tool it's downloadable from the EOS Worldwide website. It is a free tool. It is a free download. You can go get it. And if you get the book Traction, there's a whole chapter in there explaining about how to use it, how to develop it, how to make it your own. So combine the free tool with the $15 book, and boom, there you go.
You can do it for sure.
You can do it on your own.
In combination with with your leadership team, I think that was essential to get our buy-in, because you've had core values forever,
right?
But then we got to talk about what core values we thought were important,
right? So ultimately, I had 7 core values originally, and I had long definitions of them, and we went over them, But when we did the VTO for the first time, so we put it up for public discussion amongst the leadership team, and we basically trimmed it down to 6 core values, and we reworded some of the core values, and we came up with basically very short, clear, concise definitions of each core value. So I didn't give up on my core values. I think I sort of streamlined them and modernized them and made them more easily digestible because they're not for you as the business owner, they're for your team. They need to be able to read them and understand them.
And I think that they needed to have buy-in on the whole, the core values is something that they helped create.
Okay. All right. So VTO, my favorite, not your favorite.
No.
Okay. Your turn. What is yours?
My favorite is the level 10 meeting. Probably unsurprising for you.
Not surprising at all. You and your high C.
Yes, actually, I guess that is very high C of me to like this meeting. So, what
You
is
the
the
rule
level 10
follower, love rules.
I love the agenda of it.
You
and
love the strict
whole-
agenda.
The strict agenda. But so, what is the level 10 meeting? So, it is part of the bigger Meeting Pulse. Meeting Pulse is TM'd as well, by the way, tool to increase traction, accountability, communication, team health, and results. So, the whole Meeting Pulse for EOS, you've got the 2-day annual, which we talked about in a prior episode. You get the quarterly meetings, and then the weekly meetings are the 90-minute level 10 meetings. And it's got an agenda of probably 7 items, everything from a segue to the scorecard, rock review, customer employee headlines, to-do list, IDS, and then you conclude for 5 minutes with a very specific conclusion.
What's the IDS?
In the 5 minutes. IDS is identify, discuss, and solve. So
we need to go in that in a little more detail because I think that's the
Yes.
key. That and the scorecard are the 2 key things in my opinion.
absolutely, and that is, we will absolutely discuss that. You're jumping, you're not following my.
Am I not following your outline?
Oh my
I'm
gosh,
so
Mark.
sorry.
No, you did that on purpose. Now I see that little evil grin you have over there. But what I love is that even with EOS, they have given you exactly how many minutes you should be spending on each thing. So, for example, even the segue is 5 minutes. It's not, 10, which is what we just, sometimes can do if you don't have these hard and fast rules. You just kind of, the meeting becomes everybody's little catch-up time. But the level 10 meeting is so named because you get to rate the meeting at the end on a scale of 1 to 10. I think that Gino Wickman in Traction says that most meetings on average are just average. You'd say, it's a 4 or 5 meeting or something. We're not very impressed by it, which is just a waste of everybody's time. With a level 10 meeting, you're aiming for a 9.25 average for every single meeting, which I think is absurdly high. But the level 10 meeting happens at the same time, same day, same place.
They're sacred.
They really are. They every week you start on time, you end on time, and it's just one of my favorite tools. So why I think you're right. IDS is one of my favorites.
Again, for the listener who does
Identify, discuss, and solve for 60 minutes.
That's the biggest part of the meeting is to identify the problems, discuss the problems, and the key one is solve the problems. You don't walk out of any level 10 meeting without solving the problem, or if you can't solve the problem, it turns into a rock.
Well, yeah. So however you decide to quote unquote solve the problem, it could be making it a rock or making it a to-do, but you will, as a leadership team, come to a conclusion rather than just, kind of kicking the can down the road, as sometimes we used to do in meetings before EOS. You are now absolutely saying, okay, this is what we're going to do, and discuss it. So I think it also... Traction says, this is where the magic happens is in the IDS. That's just how important it is. But also it keeps everyone focused on what's important. So, one of the things that you can do is take all the things that are not working. So that's also an EOS component we're not going to talk about here. But they all become either rocks or issues or to-dos. And your issues really kind of help you get to the heart of the matter, if I can say that, and trying to make sure that you're discussing the important things. In our departmental level 10s, I can't say enough of them. I think that's also been one of the key things that has really helped our flywheel at the firm the last year, 6 to 9 months.
Okay, so we need to break that down a little bit for the listener. So we have our leadership level 10, which consists of me, you, which my English teacher would abhor if she heard me say that. She just had her birthday. My high school English teacher, Betty Stevens, just had her 88th birthday the other day. I saw it on Facebook.
Wow.
So shout out to Miss Stevens, who I'm sure does not listen to this podcast.
But also would not appreciate
my grammar. So also included are basically everybody that has a revenue responsibility. So
that is how we decided.
Each attorney that has a team that they lead is part of the leadership team. So we have the VA department, the SSD department, the insurance department,
Two of those.
and two of the insurance departments leaders.
Yep. And so we decided after we had gotten the hang of our level 10 to roll out level 10s to all of the departments.
So sub-level 10s is the way we refer to them.
That is the way we refer to them at this firm. And I think we talked about that.
And they have their own leadership teams within the departments.
Yep. And I think we've talked about that. So I don't want to
You can't
rediscuss.
assume that your listeners have listened to every podcast. So
This is fair.
it is fair.
I think that we got a lot of pushback adding yet one more meeting to their, very packed schedule. And I'm so glad that we did, because now it is one of the most looked forward meetings. Looked forward to meetings.
Oh, Miss Stevens is rolling her
Really,
eyes again.
both of us
She's just
now.
got us both now.
Everybody looks forward to their level 10 meetings because they understand the structure. They know when they can bring their issues to the team, and then they can get resolution. I actually had to kind of train people not to Teams me during their level 10 meeting, like, please add this to the big level 10 meeting. Please do this. I was getting to-dos because they were solving things in their meetings, and that was resulting in immediate action. Or meeting solving outside some of their team. So it's I really enjoy it. It's everything from.
It also eliminates a lot of unnecessary meetings.
I think it does. The way that we have implemented it, yes, I absolutely agree. So even the segue of the level 10 meeting, it's two parts. You start with your best business win. You roundtable. You go around the table. What's your best business win from last week? And then how are you doing personally and professionally, 2 numbers on a scale of 1 to 10, and why. I think that in and of itself, I think helped us kind of create some camaraderie and hopefully trust maybe a little bit within the team. But I think that even just the beauty of the segue is structured. So download this tool. The agenda is definitely on EOS Worldwide, and follow it, and because I think it can make such a difference. The conclusion, which is 5 minutes, is I think also magical. Recapping your to-do list, because the way I do it when I'm the integrator for the level 10 meetings, which means I run the level 10 meetings for our leadership team. And I'm also taking the notes during the level 10 meeting. So sometimes those are 2 different people depending on which meeting and how you decide to run them. But my computer screen is on the TV, so everyone can see what I'm working with. When I share my scorecard, those types of things, we're all looking at the same data. And so I will just highlight things that are to-dos in yellow. So it's very easy for everyone to recap, and also easy for people to see what's happening.
And the follow-up email that you send after the meeting.
Exactly. So everybody can see what they are responsible for, right? So you're discussing and you're solving, and to whatever you're discussing and solving, if it gives you an action item, it's very clear that we aren't picking on you, and we're not going behind your back after the meeting to give you an action item. Everyone sees right then and there that you are responsible for the next item. So then I recap the to-do list at the end of the meeting, and then I take those same to-do items, send an email after the meeting, and then that recap becomes part of next week's agenda. So in the very beauty of the simplicity of the closing the loop, it just increases, and it inherently increases accountability. It works, and it's been really, really good for our team. So one of the things that we've also done in our level 10 that is not pure EOS is we've adapted our scorecard segment, because you were very, dare I say, frustrated. You just felt like you weren't getting all the information that you needed. So we adapted our scorecard segment to include departmental scorecards. And I think that that's helped you feel more informed about what the other departmental level 10s are doing.
Right. Because there is a lot of data that flies back and forth in the sub-departments, and I just kind of like to know what they are. So.
Yep. So that one's my favorite. What's your next favorite, Mark?
So another one that you said you didn't like, and I think it's the same reason, because it's some of these things that can never be perfect, and you abhor things that can never be perfect, is the accountability chart. So the function of the accountability chart is to substitute for the organizational chart. So you don't think of a business as a group of people and what are the people's titles, and then how do you put the people and their titles in an organizational chart, which can be counterproductive. You think about what are the functions of the business. So each function of the business is that proverbial square in the firm organizational chart. So we have accounting and finance as a function. We have marketing as a function. We have intake as a function. We have the Social Security Department as a function, the insurance, the VA, the mass torts, and so forth. I'm probably missing something here. But each one has a function, and then each function has a descriptor. What are the descriptors with that particular function? And you do all of that first. And then you start writing in people's names as to who's in charge of that particular function. And if I'm remembering this correctly, there can only be one person in charge of each function. Only one person ultimately is accountable, because if there's more than one person, if more than one is accountable, then nobody's accountable. And it has pretty colors. We have it color coded. And I have it, and it's on big oversized 11 by 17 paper, and it's very pretty, and I think it's pretty. And I like pretty things.
You like the pretty thing.
It's a pretty thing.
Yes. Well, and it is, so you say function, I think EOS would say role.
Okay.
I think is the way, I don't know. We're not going to be pure EOS because, again, this is
there's
probably
too many,
one of my least favorite EOS. I mean, after.
Because you can't perfect it. It's never quite perfect.
It is, I mean, to be fair, as integrator, I own, quote unquote, am responsible for a lot of things, the scorecard, all, et cetera, et cetera. But this one is absolutely puts me front and center, a spotlight on me. Okay, is the accountability chart right? Well, no. All right. Well, Diana, let's look at what you did wrong type thing. But not only that, so it goes left to right. So, most org charts go top to bottom, if you think about it that way. The accountability chart does go left to right.
Why? I don't even know why that is.
That's a good question. You're putting me on the spot. I'll have to think about. I'm going to think about that one because I was not prepared to talk about.
Insert answer here later.
Chart. And it makes it very clear the visionary integrator relationship on this accountability chart. You are responsible for just me. Like you have one line.
I have it. That's it. I'm just responsible for you.
Just me. Though in actuality, you have and wear a lot more hats as the integrator, and pure EOS, everything revolves after me. So I think that's how it kind of differs from like quote unquote an org chart. So it
is a bit aspirational.
It does. It's definitely a look forward. Some of the blocks can have the word team rather than so for example, our intake team. So we have our intake manager listed out by name. And then after her, we have the intake, we have team after that. So we don't list every single intake specialist on our accountability chart. We just have team there, but all of those roles are the same there. We are currently, for all of our open and brand new positions that we're looking for right now, there is still a block there on our accountability chart for that. So,
right.
Yeah. So it's a good one. It's a good tool. I mean, I did make it pretty, but
I know. I love the colors. I'm a child when it comes to these things. I just like pretty colors, and it's a pretty color chart.
Well, I'm glad you're happy with it.
And it helps. I think it helps you when you're trying to think about your business. I mean, just goes back to E-Myth Revisited, Michael Gerber's book. You don't build a business around people. You build a business around systems, processes, and functions, i.e. a function chart. And then you fill in the names of the people who are in charge of the functions. In other words, you build the system, and then you hire people to run the system. You don't hire people first and then create the system. Now, the reality is we all know that we all did that backwards because none of us knew what we were doing when we started our law firms. But in theory, that's how you run an efficient business, is you build the system and then you hire people to run the system. And if the people happen to leave, which people leave all the time, you simply hire another person to come in and run the same system. So the business just keeps moving on. business never stops.
And the accountability chart does absolutely help you with that. It makes you, especially in a growing firm, and I think that that's one of the reasons why it is so hard, is because I think our last iteration, our 2-day annual, it literally got ripped apart. I mean, we had hired our HR technician, and then we had, finally opened Older Law for Business and promoted some people within. It needed some massive revisiting.
And it always will, and it'll never be, again, it will never be perfect. It's never perfect, and you just need to be happy with that.
I will work on it. I'm surprised that my favorite tool, Mark, is not one of your favorite tools. So my second favorite tool, the scorecard.
Okay.
Yep. So
Love the scorecard. No, I'm not against the scorecard.
So I love the scorecard. So what is it? So it is the tool that helps you manage the data component in the EOS model. So the EOS model, they'll walk you through it. I mean, you've got people, you've got process, you've got data, and so for each component, you have a tool to help you manage that. So for the scorecard, that helps you manage the data. And so it just, very broadly is a weekly report containing 5 to 15 high-level numbers for the firm or the organization. One of the things that I thought was that we did differently in our scorecard, we do it anyway, but it's the red and the green. So if you have your goal column in the left, so you have your measurable in the left.
All right, you're getting me confused here, and I know what to talk about. So don't confuse the listener.
Okay.
Drop me a word picture.
It is a graph on an Excel sheet.
Okay, got it.
All right. You got your dates across the top right. And then you've got your measurables, like whatever that is, whether that's revenue or live calls answered or whatever it's going to be on the left down in your rows. And for every measurable, you have a goal. So is your, new leads, is that going to be 50 or is that 100? And every week you populate the data for your level 10 meeting, and the data needs to be red or green. It cannot be black or whatever your standard font color is. So I think that in and of itself, just the red-green gives you a very clear picture of whether or not you're meeting your goals you've set for your team.
The natural thought that popped in my head, well, what if we actually meet the goal head on? Well, that's green then.
It's green.
So it's green. It's
Absolutely.
So what I like about it is that you can see trends because you're looking at it week by week by week, and it's on a spreadsheet, and I can look back as many weeks as I want to go on this spreadsheet, and I can see the trend. Are we trending up? Are we trending down? How bad is it? How good is it? Are we bouncing around up and back? So what are some of the key metrics that we're tracking?
I think it depends on which meeting you're going to ask about.
So let's talk about the big level 10.
So the big level 10, one of the things that I think we've probably talked about, and actually I don't know which episode this was. So we talked about on 4DX, or 4 disciplines of execution, and leading versus lagging measures in a prior episode. But I think our level 10, for the most part, has lagging measures, which is not true for our departmental scorecards, which I also think, though, is keeping with 4 disciplines of execution theory. Mm-hmm. So we see a bunch of results, things like new leads.
So that's the first thing we track: new leads,
signed contracts,
signed cases, like new cases that actually signed,
number of reviews, number of negative reviews.
Yes, positive and negative reviews is a big one we look at.
Attorney referrals, client referrals, our revenue for the prior week. And those are all just the big picture.
And the revenue is broken down by department.
By department.
Yes, and they all have goals.
Yep, and then how we're doing also on year-to-date revenue.
Right.
Then from there, we got to start looking at departmental. And so all of that was really, unless I'm missing the mark, lagging measures.
Right.
And then we get into departmental metrics that we felt were important. Things like how many VA briefs were filed last week, how many deadlines have we missed, and at AA, how much money did we get in at this specific department. And so it tends to
how many we have in outstanding collections.
Exactly. And so
things like that.
This is, again, our big level 10's mostly lagging measures. Whereas then when we look at each of the departmental level 10, so for example, the Social Security, it's their KPIs, and which will likely move away from this in the next
How many
quarter.
hearings do you have scheduled this month?
Yeah.
Because that's a key indicator of what's about to happen in the future. So.
And how many, what we call red light clients. When's the last time you reached out to a certain number of clients? How many outstanding tasks do you have? And those tend to be more leading measures in those scorecards. But again, keeping with the red and the green just everywhere. If I don't see red, green, because I sit in on the departmental level 10 meetings every quarter and as integrator, and I always am like, where's your red and your green? And I ask them to make sure that they do that and they fix that before their next level 10. So I would say that, I don't know, I think this was the hardest tool, one of the hardest tools for us to get right.
I was about to say exactly what you said. So brilliant minds. The scorecard was the hardest thing for us, and it took probably well over a year. And Christine warned us this.
Yeah.
She said, this will be the hardest thing you have to do because it's just not as obvious as you would think. And we're still refining it. And quite frankly, again, it's going to be one of these things that we probably never stop tinkering with. I would also note that in the book, it's also one of the things that the book gives you the least guidance in because it is so unique to your particular firm. It is going to require you to do more thinking than probably anything else that you might do in traction. So it is a bit frustrating. But in the end, we've made substantial progress. I still don't think it's perfect. I still feel every time I look at it that I feel I'm probably missing something. Can't quite put my finger on it, but you know what? As long as you're moving in the right direction.
And that's what I would say to any of our listeners not ready to implement EOS is just start with a scorecard, even if it's the wrong ones. And we, like Mark said, it did vary each quarter, but just start with tracking things red and green. I think almost we were too reliant on Litify for our scorecard, because you've always had dashboards.
Right.
You've had dashboards since before me. That was one of the first meeting cadences you got me on, was attending the dashboards. And this was just different. The scorecard is different. The ability to see things longitudinally, and even some of our dashboards, you can see things over time, but there's nothing more powerful than looking at it weekly and making sure you're looking at the right measurables, but also consider creating departmental scorecards, because I do think that a lot of visionaries probably struggle with the same thing that you did about
right.
like just needing to see the information.
And what you said was absolutely brilliant, because you're a brilliant person.
Well, thank you.
So just sucking up while the best I can right now. Is that the leading measures, the things that actually are the things that you can control, tend to be the things that happen at the departmental level and not so much at the leadership level. The leadership level scorecard tends to be more of lagging measures. Not that lagging measures aren't important, but you can't do anything about a lagging measure because it's already happened. But the leading measures are things where you can actually adjust, and you can pull the levers, and you can pull the strings, and you can make adjustments on the fly.
Well, and where we are at our firm's growth, the people that can push the levers are not sitting at the table. So it wouldn't make sense to have that. So in a very clear way. So for example, what does hit our level 10 is SSD revenue. And so you can see that if week over week it's in the red, we sit the second week in the red, we say, hey, Anthony and Aaron, you need to go back and make sure that check chasing, which is absolutely at a departmental level 10, KPI, ROC, all the things, that is happening, and report back to us next week. So that becomes a to-do. We highlight it in yellow, it's in the recap, and then next week he comes back with his data and he's held accountable to that. And we're in that way, you're still getting the right to discussions to the right people who affect the lever.
Okay. So, sub-reference to the listener, lagging versus leading measures was discussed in The 4 Disciplines of Execution by Covey. A great book. We did a podcast on this once before. I'd reference it, but I really can't remember which one it was.
We'll get back to you on that one.
But if you want some more explanation of the difference between leading and lagging measures, look at the 4 Disciplines of Execution.
So what are we going to talk about in our final segment, Mark?
So I think we're going to wrap up with some of the...
maybe some other tools that didn't quite make our favorites.
Some of the ones that didn't quite make our favorites, but I still think are important to at least discuss and let people know they're out there. Again, these are all free tools available at EOS worldwide. Again, we don't get any cut on this yet. We should negotiate this. We should sell advertising on this podcast to EOS. That's what we should do.
Well,
I bet
I'll add that to the to-do list and highlight in yellow.
We could make a mint.
All right. So when we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about some tools that didn't quite make our top 4.
I'm Marc Whitehead, a lawyer, entrepreneur, and business coach. Thanks so much for tuning into the Successful Barrister podcast. We have a blast creating it, and I hope you find it helpful. If our chats have sparked your interest, I'd love to hear from you. Shoot me an email at mark@markwhitehead.com. That's Mark spelled with a C. Enjoying the Successful Barrister newsletter. Even better, let's hop on a call. I'd love to chat about how we can collaborate, share ideas, or just catch up. Okay, Diana, so we're going to mention a few things. Didn't quite make the top list, but things that we think people should explore. Mm-hmm. Lay it on me. What do you got?
Well, I would say one of my favorite tools is the People Analyzer.
Okay.
Just because we weren't doing quarterly meetings or quarterly reviews.
Quarterly performance reviews.
Yes, we were not doing quarterly performance reviews.
And most people don't do those anyway. They might do an annual performance review, which is just basically an excuse for the employee to ask for a raise, which I hate.
Which is why we probably didn't do them.
Which is why we didn't do them. It's why most people don't do them, because they know it's just going to okay, how much was my raise this year? Nobody wants to do that.
So, this is actually the People Analyzer is the EOS tool for whether or not you have the right person in the right seat. So this also is a grid with your core values across the top, and then ending with get it, want it, and capacity, which is the GWC, which is also TM'd, by the way. We talked about that one in How to Be a Great Boss, where you very uncomfortably made me, or I was very uncomfortable, and you made me rate you on your GWC.
Oh, yes.
If you want some, just really
How did I work? How did I rate?
Yeah,
when you get to rate your boss,
people, it was very uncomfortable. But on the core values, you're rating the team member on a plus minus scale or minus scale, and on the GWC, you're just a simple yes or no. It's 100% or not. And it just is a great way to start. If you also, like our firm, did not do a quarterly conversation, do yours. Just start here. It's a good one. Also available on EOS worldwide. But it's just a good way to see whether or not this person is a good fit. I like it because, as we discussed in a prior episode, we're talking about a lot about prior episodes this time. But, because
we actually looked them up for once.
Crucial conversations. That was episode 11. And we talked about how you struggled with that because, no offense, Mark, but you struggle with accountability, holding our team accountable. And so with the People Analyzer, yeah, you've admitted it though, so I have a solid defense. So with the People Analyzer, one of the things you struggled with the crucial conversation is what is the conversation going to, I need to schedule time to think about what I'm going to talk about with this person. The People Analyzer makes it real easy. Here's your format. It gives you, you can talk about specific examples. And then, the other thing that the crucial conversations that we discussed that you struggle with is the follow-up. Did you really make the change that we said that you were going to make and not do this again? There's inherent in there a built-in, hey, next quarter, guess what we're going to do? We're
going to do this all over again.
All over again. So you can see it a lot more easily, that recurring thing.
So just real briefly, we'll go through it. All right. So we have 6 core values, which I mentioned in the first segment. So for each one of this on the grid, the employee rates themselves as either a plus minus, or a minus. Mm-hmm. And the supervisor does the same thing at the same time while they're sitting across the table looking at each other. We did this today at lunch. I did your GWC, or I'm sorry, I'm using the wrong term here, but.
Yeah, you did my People Analyzer with the core values and then my GWC.
So I rated you on integrity, compassion, commitment, excellence, teamwork, and wellness. I gave you pluses on all of them.
Thank you. I hope your attorneys don't listen to this because they're going to get very upset.
I know. They don't listen to this.
Okay, good.
You, not unsurprisingly, did not give yourself all pluses because you're overly critical of yourself. This is one of your habits.
High standards, sir.
You have high standards of yourself, and I appreciate that. So yes, I fully expected you not to give yourself all pluses, and you
well, hey, at least I met expectations.
So you met expectations. So that's the first part. The second part is then you rate yes or no on get it, want it, and have the capacity for the job. Mm-hmm. So, and And that's kind of the tough standard because the standard is 100% of the time, which I think if we were all truthful, none of us are there 100% of the time. There are days when I don't want to get out of bed. There's days when I don't want to come to the office, but I would say that 99% of the time I'm fine. But so I think we kind of grade each other on the curve there. If you get 95, I think we'll go with that. But
we are modified EOS.
we are modified EOS. But the beauty of it, it's a simple format. It takes literally 5 minutes to do it. Now, then you may sit and discuss it because you should discuss it. You should compare the differences, and then you should discuss those differences. And that discussion may last 10, 15, 20, 30 minutes, whatever. But that's when you have the discussion, you have the follow-up, and then you have sort of, oh, by the way, we're going to do this exact same thing again in 90 days.
And I think it's very helpful because it definitely, I've sat in a few of those just as the integrator to make sure that everyone understands what they were supposed to do. Because then, at least for our leadership team, then usually when I sit in with the attorney, I want to make sure I walk through it. I'm like, and this is what you would do with your team, and this is what you would say, and make sure you explain it. So I'm teaching as much as I am, I get to be the silent observer. They have absolutely, it served as an impetus for change. It's re-energized some of our attorneys to really kind of like, oh, well, I see what you're saying.
And I think one of the unwritten rules that we have, and it might not be a written rule, is that we don't discuss salaries here. This is not the time to ask for a raise.
No.
We're not going to discuss your salary. That would bias the conversation totally.
Yes, absolutely.
We're absolutely not going to discuss salaries.
So in closing, Mark, though, what was one of your favorite tools that we did not discuss?
Well, I would go with the Delegate and Elevate.
That's a good one.
Yes. That tool, and you may have to explain it more than I do. I know the concept of it, but...
Yep, it's a quadrant as well.
But the quadrant is...
very similar to the Eisenhower matrix or whichever other ones. But so top left is...
All right, so we're envisioning a diagram of four boxes.
Yep.
And...
Oh, sorry. Love great is it? So you're listing out your activities. So the idea with the Delegate and Elevate is that you're taking, call it a week, ideally, I guess, a week of your time, and you're writing down all the activities that you do. And I know that sounds just overwhelming already, but just bear with us. So what you're writing down, every single thing you do, and you're dividing those activities into 4 quadrants. Top left is love it and you're great at it. Top right is you like what you're doing and you're good at it. And your bottom left is you don't like it, but you are good at it. And then the bottom right is you don't like it and you're definitely not good at it. So, for example, I would put for some of our attorneys, who shall not be named, expense reports. They don't like doing them, and they are surely not good at tracking all of their receipts or their expenses. And so what you're trying to do is figure out which activity, you're obviously, as you are with the Eisenhower matrix, trying to stay above the line. What I think we found with...
So you want to stick with what you're good at and you like, or what you're great at and you love.
Mm-hmm. And so one of the things that I found with our firm as we grew, they were like, well, I don't know what we have to delegate. Our team leaders, oh my gosh, we spend so much time with our team leaders. And they were like, well, I don't know what to delegate. Everything has to be done by me. How many times have we heard that? Everything has to be done by me. Or... well, who would I even delegate it to? There's nobody in the firm that could do that. I'm like, okay, well, there's nobody in the firm that could do one expense report, but maybe there's somebody in the firm or somebody I could outsource to that could do 4 or 5 expense reports. Maybe,
Maybe.
It's, but so I think for a growing firm, and also just to get visibility into what your people are doing, because sometimes we think we know what they're doing, but maybe we really don't, because I was shocked to find out that, our attorneys do so much administrative work. So why do you like this tool, Mark?
Well, I mean, to me, the whole essence of my success is, delegation. I've talked about before, killing the hero. I used to do everything within the firm, try the cases, mediate the cases, do the depositions, do the marketing, do the sign. I used to do it all. And I wasn't successful until I learned to delegate these tasks to other people. So I delegated the task. I elevated myself. Mainly, I elevated my bank account. So this was something that was hard to learn. You know, nobody taught me this. I assumed I was the hero. I had to do all of this stuff. And it took years for me to learn. And I just gradually started delegating tasks. I started delegating, you know, the marketing side. I started delegating the intake side. I started delegating, you know, cases, case management. I used to settle all the cases. I used to go to all the, you know, I started delegating. I hired people to do that. I started learning the concept of developing profit centers underneath me. This is all, now I didn't know the term delegate and elevate back then. I just knew that I needed to find help. But that's really, you know, the impetus behind it. And then I read Traction. I'm like, oh, that's what I was doing. I just didn't know what to call it. And I didn't know a good process for it. It was sort of haphazard. It was sort of funny. One of the epiphanies that I learned 25 years ago is I would just keep getting frustrated, and I would getting more frustrated about things. And I'm like, I need to hire a paralegal to do that for me. And I would just hire somebody. And I wasn't thinking, it wasn't a master plan, but then all of a sudden my life got a little bit better because I found a good hire. You know, like, well, I should hire another one. I don't know why. I don't have a plan. I don't have an org chart. I don't have a function chart set up, but I should just hire somebody, you know, and then we'll figure it out. We'll wing it, you know, which is backwards. That's not how you should do it. But in the end, it did sort of work out because I at least took the impetus of what I was doing is I was bringing on more capacity with the firm to be able to delegate and elevate. I just didn't know what to call it back then. I didn't know the system behind it. It was sort of, you know, entrepreneurial success by pure dumb luck.
And I think that this Delegate and Elevate tool is one way to for sure systematize your growth. Because now, especially with the advent of AI and AI options, it used to be, the decision was really simple, right? It used to be, do I hire someone? Yes, that person was going to be in your vicinity, right? It was going to be someone in the Houston proper that could come to this building. Then it became, okay, well, if I hire someone, do they need to be remote, hybrid, or in office? And then now it's, do I need to hire someone that is offshore, remote, hybrid, or in office? And then now it's, do I need to look at a system like AI, computer, something, a tool,
some sort of tech,
invest in something to make this easier? So the solutions can get a lot more diverse, but first you have to be crystal clear about which problem you're trying to solve. And this tool makes it crystal clear, especially in a growing firm where you're finding bottlenecks, but you're really just not sure why. This Delegate and Elevate tool, I think, is good.
Well, and that's you know, one of the big impediments to growth is bottlenecks, and where are the bottlenecks within the firm, and identifying the bottlenecks. Sometimes they're not easy to see. You know, we were talking about that today earlier in our insurance meeting. I'm sensing a bottleneck in here somewhere. I'm not quite sure where the bottleneck. I
love that, by the way, when you say those in those meetings. Okay, now I'm just trying to fix a gut feeling.
Yeah, I'm trying to fix it. I have a gut feeling that there's a bottleneck in there. But I'm going to investigate it further, and then we'll figure it out.
Yeah.
But then, all right, what do you do about the bottleneck? Well, you know, it's something to do with systems, processes, people, technology. Somewhere in there is the answer.
Yeah. And so the Delegate and Elevate tool, I think, is really good there. So I don't know, Mark. I really enjoyed this EOS tool. So,
all right. Anything else before we wrap up?
No.
Okay.
I hope it was helpful, though, for people.
So, all right. So just going back. So EOSworldwide.com
correct
is the site. And then you navigate up to the resources tool.
Tools. Yep. It's
and
in the
just look at all the tools. And so they have all these lovely PDFs in there of all these lovely tools. Obviously, I don't think this works well unless you get the book Traction and read it, and then take the $15 and the 5 hours it'll take you to read it, and then go download the tools and just pick one and go with it. And then next month pick another and go with it, and so forth and so forth. And by the time you get 12 months down the road, you will have implemented the vast majority of the EOS system all on your own, all for that $15 investment.
Yep.
What
Let
a bargain.
us know how it goes.
Let us know. So email me at mark@markwhitehead.com. Mark is spelled with a C, and I have to remind people on both sides of the ad, amazingly enough. Thought you people were attorneys. I thought you people were smart. What the hell? If you want to discuss this further. So I got a lot of email. We got a lot of emails last week
Oh, that's good.
We got a lot of emails from people. I made the offer for our sales manual,
Okay.
our sales training manual, and
Nice.
I got a lot of people take me up on that. So offer's still out there, mark@markwhitehead.com if you want to, or if you just want to talk about things. But with that, we got to get out of here. So I want to thank everybody for listening to the Successful Barrister podcast, where legal legends are made. I'm Mark.
And I'm Diana.
And together we're the dynamic duo of law. So remember to rate and review us wherever you get your podcast. And if you enjoy the podcast, make sure you tell your friends. Spread the word. Let's get the listenership up. And visit us at successfulbarrister.com, and be sure to visit our sponsor, Mark Whitehead & Associates, a national disability law firm at I don't get all choked up. Oh, I said our
That's your
name and it just choked me up. Visit Mark Whitehead & Associates at disabilitydenials.com. And with that, we're out of here.
Bye.